Ramses, welcome to the show. This is AWS Made Easy. Now, we have been friends for half a lifetime now, since college, which was an embarrassingly long time ago. But yeah, welcome to the show.
Thank you, thank you. It's a absolute pleasure to be here. It's been amazing. It's been half a lifetime, but it's been an amazing lifetime to see where we've both gone in AI.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, full introduction, Ramses Alcaid, CEO, founder of Neurable, and we want to get into that, into how you got there, kind of the story, what you're up to now. And of course, we are AWS Made Easy. We'll talk a little bit about AWS, but more like I want to get your big picture thoughts on AI. And are you an AI optimist? Are you just let's just talk about kind of the philosophy of it. I think is going to be really fun.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an AI optimist for sure. We've handled so many new technologies. For example, the nuclear bomb. I mean, that's a pretty big responsibility. You know what I'm saying? So like, and I think part of it too is just informed by there's this great book I read. I can't remember the name, but I'm pretty sure you can just throw it up on the screen after the call. But it's just we as human beings will find a way, and I think we're gonna find a way to work with AI as well. I don't know. What about you? I'm curious about your thoughts.
I think about I'm very excited about it. I think there's been so many technologies that will say, okay, this will be the one where all of a sudden we won't have anything to do. We're all going to be idle misfits. Like when the tractor came out, like, okay, we're not going to have to ride horses anymore. We're going to have nothing to do. And every invention we've managed to capture the good. And sure, there's been bad as well. We're probably not as healthy as the tractor days, but we're living longer and we've captured the value of having like infinite food. And so I'm optimistic as well.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, like if AI solves all of our problems, then like I'm cool with just our just making some art and travel in space at hypersonic speed. Supersonic, not supersonic. What is it like? Faster than light speeds, right? Yeah, hyperspeed. There you go. That's what I was looking for.
Okay, so then what movie representation of AI do you think is the most accurate?
Ooh, man, that's a tough one. The problem is most movies just have AI be taking over the world, Like what good movies with AI have been around? I guess that's my
Well, okay, so
question.
Her. Yeah, okay, so the movie Her, right?
Yeah.
Where the AI gets bored of us, leaves, goes somewhere. Now I assume that the humans are still responsible for keeping the power on, although maybe in the movie, in the backstory, that the AI has taken over a power plant just to power itself. Or maybe they've, they invented some other technology that's keeping them powered.
I could see that. I could see. What about this? I'll make up a movie. So like the movie that I would see AI going towards is like, we're gonna have a future where all the boring stuff is done by the AI. Yeah, it can be, and people say like, oh, but it's taking the art jobs or things like that. It's really not, right? It's enabling people who may not have as strong art skill to be able to develop their vision more easily, right? And so I want to see a future where our visions can be developed at the pace of our imagination instead of, having to learn all these skills, et cetera, just to make something happen.
I'm so glad you said that. It's like there's been art that I've made with ChatGPT, and I guess with Dolly, and it's nothing that would be, amazing. It's not gonna be at any museum, but I enjoy looking at it, and it's something I thought of. And yeah, it's probably motel level art, but it's mine, and I enjoy it.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like, even if we do, I think that there is always going to be space for actors. Think about, for example, theater, right? Theater still exists. Sure, it's dropped dramatically now that we have movies, we have animated films, we have so many other types of media. I think there's always going to be space for humans to be the ones to be a part of the creation. But I think that once again, it's like, how do we reduce the roadblocks toward creation of somebody's imagination? And I just think that's powerful. That's beautiful. And as human beings, like, that's what we should be doing. We should be creating.
That's a pretty neat way of putting it. It's that for the most part, it removes the obstacle, and just how we see. I don't know. Sometimes you get YouTube doom scrolling, and you see a short of like some artisan who's made something the same way for 1,000 years, but that'll still be there. Doesn't mean that we can enjoy the mass-produced, cheaper versions that are 50% as good but cost 100th the price.
Yeah, and on top of that, I don't know if you've seen this before, but the more you know about how something is done, the more you appreciate it, right? So if I showed you a picture of like, the Mona Lisa, and you didn't know anything about it and how it transformed art, and it created a whole new concept of how to even draw human beings, you would just be like, oh, that's a nice picture. But once you start to understand who made it, why they made it, the time period they're in, like this person was in their blue period, for example, or this was inspired by African art and it created, what Picasso built, right? Like that story matters too. And sometimes what I would say is like we're ignoring the fact that I think that human made art will always have value, right? But it'll just require a certain level of storytelling to really understand it.
That's a good point. Like the actual pixels that make up the Mona Lisa, on the one hand, might not be that great, but in the context of the painting of it, and the fact that this is actual pigments on an actual canvas, and it's hundreds of years old, and millions of people have come to see it for the last couple of centuries, right? That the context matters.
And until we have brain computer interfaces, right, we're never going to be able to express ourselves as deeply as the person who painted the Mona Lisa, right? Even if we add to prompts as much information as we want, it'll never be as close of a reflection. There's always going to be one color that's off or something, because the AI is doing its best, right? But it can't read your mind, right? And so I think there's always going to be space for human emotion being shared. Up until maybe we use AI to make art, BCIs to use AI art, right?
Well, you used a good phrase of reading your mind. So tell us about Neurable and what it does, and can you read our minds yet?
We can't read your mind, but essentially what Neurable is a technology that was developed at the University of Michigan. It helps us essentially enable everyday products that have medical grade brain computer interfaces. Brain computer interface is just the simple way of saying that technology that can record your brain activity and helps you interface with other technology. So like these headphones I have around my neck, they actually have these like silver fabrics right here on the sides. These are called electroencephalography, or EEG. They record.
Is this metal?
Yeah, it's silver. I mean, it's soft, right? It's a fabric, right?
Okay, but it's conductive.
It's conductive, and then it records your brain activity, and from there we're able to tell, for example, how your focus is or other types of neural conditions. Essentially like a Fitbit for your brain, right? And what would be really cool is seeing the future where we could combine this with even other layers of AI to start creating art or other, understanding the body in deeper ways than has ever been possible, right?
Okay, so what is the level of granularity that we're talking about here? Say if I was quadriplegic, with a hand up, well, is that what level of granularity are we thinking?
Yeah, right now, at least on the non-invasive space, so the space where we don't need to do surgery, so non-Neuralink, right? It's pretty basic information. It's like, how is your focus? How are different types of for example, something called functional connectivity. So how well does your brain connect, right? Which is associated to neurodegenerative diseases. So you can only tell really high levels of information. But I actually brought a demo if you actually want to see some of that data.
Yes, I do. That would be really, really cool. Okay.
So what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you put on these headphones just like they're normal pair of headphones.
Okay.
Just make sure your ear's fully inside the ear cup.
Okay. This is left and right there.
Yep. Now, what's interesting is that normally to put on one of these systems, like a brain computer interface, it would normally take about an hour, right? There'd be like gel and all the setup. Like you're done, you're set up, right? Which is a huge kind of innovation that the team at Neurable did.
Okay, and they're a little bit heavier than I expected.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, I'm thinking of that Jurassic Park, right? It's heavy, so it's expensive.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really high quality headphone.
Right? Yeah,
it
feels awesome.
Yeah, it's from our partner Master Dynamic. They weigh a little bit less than the Apple AirPod Maxes, right? But it's at that level of premium.
Yeah, no, I feel the construction. Like, because you normally get headphones on, like even my expensive Sony ones, they feel like if you twisted them wrong, they'd break, and it would be over.
Yeah, these are pretty hardy,
Okay. All right, so let's see.
So, Steven, I just want you to kind of relax and chill out for a second while you don't have to close your eyes. Just kind of chill while it boots up. But on the left side of the screen, there's going to be a graph. I just want you to ignore that. It's going to be for everybody else on the call to listen to. But do you see these numbers right here on popping out in the bottom?
Yes.
I want you to start saying them in your head as intensely as you can. Okay, now stop. So as you've been focusing on those numbers, this line has been going up. This is actually your focus level.
That's so cool. Wow.
And now that you're getting distracted, you're going to see it go down, right?
So, okay, so what was it? listening to?
So you have in your frontal lobe, right? Something your brain processes information as you're focusing. It's called an alpha beta response. We're able to pick that up around the ear and then turn that into essentially a focus score. But go ahead and do it again. You'll see that you're essentially driving this thing yourself. You can see how it shoots right up, right? Now I'm gonna give you something else. I'm gonna give you an article to read because this is actually really cool, like a parlor trick that I'm gonna show you. But it's actually about the best headphones of 2024, which you're wearing. So go ahead and give that a read until you get to the bottom of the web page. All right, check this out. So you see this whole section here? That was actually you reading. And then when you hit this long form ad up here, you saw that giant dip that happened.
Wow. Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah, and then you went back to reading, and then this
Okay.
is me distracting you, right? Isn't that crazy?
Wow. Okay.
So the key thing is that we're able to pick up really high like precision, and this is actually how we use AI. Normally these signals are really noisy, right? And so we use AI to actually filter the signals that we pick up from these sensors so that instead of having to have a large kind of medical grade system, we're able to replicate a lot of that same capacity with something as simple as a pair of headphones, right? And that brings essentially medical grade technology to the consumer. But most powerfully is that just like the Apple Watch started out with tracking things like heart rate or motion, with machine learning, heart rate turned into heart arrhythmia detection. Movement turned into Parkinson's detection. So we're starting with things like focus, but in the future with machine learning, you can track neurodegeneration like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, right? All these other capabilities.
Well, and especially if you had data over time, you'd think that in order to get that kind of data, it'd have to be so much more invasive.
It normally does either require like a strip of electrodes near the forehead, because the signal's from your frontal lobe, or it requires like a ton of sensors and gel everywhere. And so that's really what the difference is between Neurable technology. What else is out there is the fact that we can boost the signal high enough that it works as seamlessly and as responsive as you saw it, right? It's really, that's our big differentiator. We don't actually build hardware. We don't do anything else, right? Like these headphones are from Master Dynamic, but you'll see up here it says powered by Neurable AI. So what we do is we just license that AI to these headphone brands, and then they're able to bring out this technology that was previously locked inside a laboratory.
And so is the idea that as you refine your technology, you can have products that will give you, okay, are you focused? And I don't know, like there's different kinds of focus, I suppose, right? You get better and better resolution and, different, there's times where, I've read something complicated and I'm kind of letting my mind wander a little bit, but I know it's part of my process of eventually getting to the answer.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure you're going to have it much more detailed, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's an app, and in the app, you can track your focus. It'll tell you to take a break whenever you're burning out. And then it also has an AI that recommends you different pieces of information, like when do you focus best, what type of work, etc. But that's just really the beginning, right? Because just like we're starting with focus, we're actually also working with the U.S. Army. They're actually our biggest customer, and we're tracking things like anomalies that happen to the brain. So primarily like traumatic brain injuries, right? And so that's going to be a software update to your headphones, right? And so all these things eventually just become software updates to the everyday wearable you use. And that's, I think, the most powerful part, that all this neurological information becomes yours. You're empowered by it.
That's so wild to think about. And I saw it was reacting pretty quickly. Like, I was surprised that there's a signal coming out of my ears or out of my head somewhere that's that real time.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I would have thought that it was, over a 2 or 3 minute period and not like, oh, this pop up happened. And I could definitely feel jarred by this pop up, but not enough to think, okay, it's not going to change anything outside of my head.
Yeah, no, and that was, that's just super important because, there is a lot of neurotechnology out there that you don't really know that it works. And we want to make sure that people know that it works. And so in order to do that, we have a lot of real-time things that you can do to test it out. For example, you just saw it right there, right? And when you feel that you're getting distracted by an ad, we want you to be able to see that too.
So what about for people like I can think about pilots or truckers especially, where you don't, pilot, there's high stakes enough that you have another person there, well, often, but then for say over the highway truckers, right? You could have some kind of focus. What would your number be while you're driving?
Yeah, we actually have a nature paper that we did with the University of Graz, where we had truck drivers wearing not these, but like larger scalp systems. It still works on this technology, but that's the setup that they had. And then we ran our algorithm, and we were able to predict about 30 minutes before they got into an accident, which is crazy, right? Every other sensor they used, eye tracking, heart rate, etc., was able to pick it up within a few seconds, but we were able to pick it up 30 minutes before.
Okay, because other sensors could figure out, okay, they're falling asleep, and like, I have a GM car, and I don't have Super Cruise. I really wanted to, but I guess they're looking at, are your eyes open? But that's, you could still be off into space even if your eyes are open.
Exactly, exactly. Actually, one of the key things that happens with your body, and this is a very primitive response, is that your brain actually wants to hide weakness, right? Because you don't want to be an animal walking around showing injury, something's going to eat you, right? And so a lot of your periphery, so your eyes, your arms, your legs, all these other systems will act like they're still working. And then out of nowhere, you'll just fall asleep on the wheel, right? And it's because your brain has been battling fatigue for hours, but it's been trying to hide that. And so we're able to actually track that fatigue because it's coming from your brain, not from your periphery, and then be able to make decisions based off of that.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, there's something in there that knows, okay, I have to function, I have to get this thing done, and it's really important to my livelihood, my responsibilities, and so you have this incentive to kind of trick yourself into thinking that you're okay.
Yeah, and your brain is doing it to protect you, right? And that happens actually when you do your normal work too. So most people, and I mean most, I mean all people, can't detect when they're burnt out. You think you can. When you're burnt out, it's because you're so tired, your body is now tired. Your brain has been tired for sometimes hours beforehand, right? And so we're able to detect that burnout and then tell you to take a break. And it's crazy how a 10-minute break at the right time actually boosts your productivity afterwards. And that's one of the key features that the technology has right now.
Because you'd think, rewinding back, think 50 years ago in the workplace, right? You have these like very fixed times, right? Which might work great for whoever wrote that schedule initially, right? So 50 years ago it was the smoke break at 10:45, and whatever, the smoke break at 1:15.
And then the smoke break at 3 o'clock, right?
Exactly. But how did this okay, so with this you can actually figure out when you need that 10 or 15 minutes.
Exactly, exactly. And now that, this is especially people who are picking it up are people who do coding, who do knowledge work. They sit down, they have to do a few hours of work, but they have a little bit of flexibility in their schedule. Or, I mean, I use it all the time, and I've actually just restructured my days. I don't have hour-long meetings anymore. I have 50-minute meetings. And then if I don't get a brain break, then I'll just use the last 10, and if I do, I have that flexibility to take a break, right?
Okay, so are you wearing these during the meeting? So this is like an online meeting, and you're saying, okay, look, because you're setting the schedule, you know that after 50 minutes, you're just not going to be paying attention. You're not going to be focused. And so why waste everyone's time?
Exactly. And the meeting is set up as a 50-minute meeting, right? So the expectation that I have 50 minutes is already there, right? Because they're also just a great pair of headphones. They have great audio noise cancellation. You can take calls with them. So like I'll be on a call, I'll be talking to people, and then it'll tell me, hey, you need a brain break. And then, I know like, hey, I have this hard stop, and then you can take that break.
So this is so much more direct. I could see people who have a knowledge workforce wanting this data.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we get investment traders, we get people who do legal work, programmers, like And we're starting to work with organizations now so that like everybody on their team has one, right? And it's not so that the employer can spy on the team members. Like it's so that the employee has their own data and it tells them, hey, you need to take a break. Hey, you need to, we really care a lot about ethics. So we make sure that it's about the employee getting the data and making decisions, right?
Okay, so this does not turn into some kind of a brain spying thing.
No, my co-founder is actually a neuroethicist and data policy expert. So we've designed it from the ground up to make sure we respect people's privacy. We don't even store the data and the IDs of the person in the same server.
Okay,
Like, that's how,
really
you know.
cool. Okay. Well, actually, let's take a 2-minute brain break, or maybe 5, and then we come back. Let's keep going. This is awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. Cloudfix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because Cloudfix uses AWS recommended savings techniques. It fixes, not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the link to start saving now.
Okay, we're back. And we were talking earlier just about the different usages of this data in terms of productivity. What has been your biggest surprise personally that as you've kind of led this effort, and do you feel like you know yourself better? Or
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many surprises. I think the one that changed my life the most was I used to have this mentality of like just grind mindset, right? Like I'm gonna work all day and I'm not gonna take any breaks. And we started the technology, I know, right? And now I'm the advocate for it. That's a crazy thing, right? But this is why, right? So I saw my data and we didn't have the break system created yet, and I saw that I was going into burnout. And what's crazy is we did this study with the Mayo Clinic, and we saw that during burnout, people doubled their mistakes, and they also just had a lot more stress end of day, etc. And I was like, man, I'm doing a disservice to my company to like work during this time frame. If I just took a 10-minute break here, as has been shown by all the paperwork and the research in the past, it actually boosts my productivity. And I restructured my entire life essentially to work in that way. And it completely changed my perspective. But I'll share one other thing. There's a ton of crazy things that I've done on my Instagram, like like walking on fire while wearing the headphones, right? Like F1 car racing, like simulators. So if you want to see a lot of that crazy stuff, check that out. But the most meaningful one was seeing my breaks essentially.
so then, have you seen like what's with different employees, right? I'm sure that they're all testing this on themselves too. So are there really like morning people and night people? Like, are you seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, you can easily, so there's just so many experiments people run, right? And it gets even more well defined than morning people or night people. For example, we had this one participant and he would drink coffee in the morning and in the afternoon. Pretty standard coffee cycle for somebody, right? And then one day, and what he noticed is that he would drink coffee in the morning and he'd be focused. He'd drink coffee in the afternoon and it wouldn't help him, right? Which is already a huge like sign. But then one day he forgot to drink coffee in the morning and still was focused. Then when he drank coffee in the afternoon, his focus went up. So he's overburning himself out with coffee in the morning is what was happening. And now he could only drink, now he just needed to drink one coffee per day, lowered his caffeine as well too, so he could sleep better. And he was able to focus all day. So there's all these things that people are learning about themselves as they use the technology.
Okay. And then how do you see how, I don't know, like if you're hungry, because a lot of people are talking about intermittent fasting and just different states of your metabolism. So have you seen that affect your focus? Have you tried doing a fast or an extended fast or just missing lunch and seeing what happens?
Yeah, I mean, you can very easily see how all this stuff impacts your ability to focus. Actually, there's going to be a blog article on my LinkedIn being posted really soon that we can post with this, but it's actually 9 different experiments that I've done with the technology. So, and one of them that I thought was really interesting is we went to Vermont and we went to this park and everybody there smokes marijuana, right?
Okay.
And it was like night and day whether we could
I'll
detect
take your word for it.
Like the level of focus like drop that happened from like using marijuana compared to somebody who wasn't on marijuana was like night and day, which is crazy.
So what's the next thing that you want to quantify? Like what's next on the roadmap? There would be creativity, or and are those things? Would you see that those things are parallel? I mean, there's the stereotype of the artist who has this eureka moment out of nowhere, but then what's the next thing you want to try and quantify?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's whatever brings the most value to. Uh, we're really passionate about veterans in the military, right? Uh, I grew up in a military neighborhood. A lot of my friends went to Afghanistan and to Iraq. And I've seen a lot of them come back with PTSD, with traumatic brain injuries. And so we've been really passionate about that area. And so now we're working with the Army to essentially do traumatic brain injury detection, right? But you can imagine how that will eventually become an update to your headphones, but then football helmets, bicycle helmets, right? It expands to so many other areas where we can start tracking the brain when it comes to injury in a way that hasn't been possible yet.
Okay, we'll have to talk offline about this, but I have a friend of mine who is the head of research at Stop Soldier Suicide, and that's a huge part of I think what leads into that is this traumatic brain injury and changing the perceptions of various emotions. And I'm not an expert, but I'd imagine I want the two of you to start talking about that because it's an enormously important problem.
You're 100% right. And we started seeing this first most prevalently with individuals who were in fighting sports. So think boxing, think MMA. We saw that as their brain started to deteriorate, because a lot of those individuals get a lot of high-end, high-quality medical care compared to, you'd be surprised, the average military person doesn't necessarily get access to MRIs all the time, right? And so what we saw is that as deterioration of the brain occurred, it essentially doubled the probability of them committing suicide and other neurodegenerative diseases, right? Like, it's crazy. And so what if we could track when these moments happen, how much impact is occurring, how much time a person should recover in order to minimize the long-term damage to their brain, right? So those are the things we're really passionate about right now, and we want to bring to the headphones and other types of platforms that we're releasing in the future.
Well, that's fantastic. It's a really, really important area to be in, and the people who are suffering from that, they deserve all the care they can get. So that's great.
For sure, yeah. I mean, freedom isn't free. Like, that's the truth. So
yeah, absolutely. So on the AI side, in general, are you using AI in other ways? Are you using AI powered development tools? Are you using like LLMs? What are your thoughts on those?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of LLMs. We're not using we do less with language models because we primarily work with brain data, but we use it, I would say, in three kind of key areas. The first one is in the AI-based filtering, which is what our company is known for. The second one is classifying all the different unique brain responses, some tied to focus and attention like you used today, other ones tied to brain damage, right? And then the third area is really more from the cloud side, giving people insights. So as we collect their data, we can let them know, hey, you focus best in the morning. So that's probably when you want to do your hardest work, right? In the evening, you're burnt out a lot more. And that does change person to person. That's when you should do your emails, when you're burnt out, right? Like, do something chill, or go for a walk. It's actually better to do that.
Do expense reports. That's the thing I like doing the least. And if my boss is watching, that's why they're always late, is because I really don't enjoy doing it. It's more interesting to do, but I really need to get paid back for that. So, yeah, it's a good point that you can kind of schedule your day in such a way, and I think people kind of find this over time, but being able to have the data to back it up and doing it a lot faster and earlier, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, if you see data creates intervention, right? Earlier identification leads to earlier, intervention. Like that's what we've seen time and time again. And sometimes people tell me, oh, I can't modify my day. I can't do this. I can't do that. Honestly, you can. Like, I'm a CEO. I'm traveling all the time. I understand not every day is going to have that level of flexibility, but like telling people you're going to have a 50-minute meeting with them or a 25-minute meeting instead of a 30-minute one, Like those are small changes that lead to big productivity boosts. Those are things that are actually pretty doable by most people.
Yeah, no one's going to argue or, oh, the meeting ends at 3:25 instead of 3:30. We really could have used that extra 5. Like, no, that's not.
It actually also gets people on task faster because they're like, we got 25 minutes, we got to knock this out, right? And we've just found huge productivity gains across the whole team.
Now, on the leadership side, you've been a CEO of a growing company. How big is Neurable now?
About 25 people.
Did you envision this, and how did you kind of prepare to have this size of responsibility, right? Because it's not just the product, but just all the day-to-day running of a company and all that stuff. Where do you find an office, or should you go remote or not? Like all this kind of other stuff how have you learned that?
I mean, I think that the number one lesson that I learned that enables everything else is team is the most important thing, right? I was at the University of Michigan, had just started building the team out, and honestly, like speaking, it was not going well, right? Because I thought I was going to be a scientist, right? I didn't necessarily think I was going to
remember
run
those
a
days.
company, right? And I went to my mentor, Richard Sheridan, who has a company called Menlo Innovations, and he wrote a book called Joy Inc., which is all about how to create joyous companies. And he gave me 2 books. One is called 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, and the other one's called Leadership and Self-Deception. He's like, make these your Bible. And the most important thing about that book was that at the end of the day, if you have a team where you can talk transparently and hold each other accountable, results just happen. If somebody's responsible for finding an office and they're transparent about the information, how long things are taking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we can work together, like literally things just happen, right? It's kind of magical, but it's really hard to do all the other stuff, like create trust with them, like, hold them accountable. That's a really difficult skill to learn, to do that in a way that's respectful, right? But then everything else just follows.
That's really good advice. So just being able to, I guess, really is that layer of trust. And then once you have that, everything else can build on top of that. And it's funny, when you're a younger employee, you think, okay, if my boss says I have to have this done by tomorrow, you do the best you can, but you don't have to, we were both grad students together, right? You stay up all night, you pull this all-nighter, and your advisor looks at it, like, oh, this is dumb, do it again. Like, why? It's going to take me a week to recover from this. But it's more important to be able to say, no, I'm not on the right track here. I need to take an extra week to think about this. And most businesses are not that time critical.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I would say, even in a time critical business, it's still more important to do it that way, right? Because
and to do it right.
Like in a startup, sometimes a month is life or death, like honestly, right? And so, but the truth of the matter is like, in the case of the grad student, maybe you can cram and get it done in one night, but it's not going to be done well, right? So you're going to have to redo it.
It'll be a disaster.
Or in the case of a company, let's say you guys do have a month of runway left, right? And your employee says they're going to get it done in a month, and this is a key critical project, but the reality of it is it's probably not going to be done well or done in time. You know what's a better thing to do? Talk to your teammate and be like, this isn't going to get done in a month. Let's work together on a new plan, right? Something that is feasible.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of young people need to learn, which is you shouldn't get in trouble for sharing the information to your boss, right? And if they do, then you have a crappy boss, because like that information is really valuable. If I have to make a decision on the livelihood of my company, I want all that information. And if this isn't going to get done in a month, then it's not worth us trying to do this. We should be doing some other plan that can help us within this time period.
Well, I can imagine, as with any startup, there's some close calls. I can imagine. Any that you can share yet, or we'll save that for the 5-year retrospective?
I think what I'll share is I'll share a story that's AWS related.
Okay.
Since we're on this this podcast right now. So it wasn't necessarily a close call, but it was very frightening to us when it happened, right? So essentially, we use AWS for all our backend and all the data, et cetera. And multiple people in the company kept getting these emails about how like we owed money for AWS to pay our bill. But we just thought that they were scam emails because and it's not that they didn't look legit or anything. It's just that because multiple people got it, we were just like, oh, someone's trying to have us do a PayPal wire to somewhere else, right? And so then everybody ignored it. And and then one day we woke up and I was in the middle of a flight internationally, right? And I land and I have like, I kid you not, like 100 messages on my phone, right? And I'm looking at it and they're like, our servers are down, someone's hacking us, like everyone's freaking out, trying to figure out what's going on. Turns out it was our fault. We didn't pay our bill, right?
And they'll give you a bit of a grace period. So you were probably like 60 days in arrears or something like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we messed up pretty profoundly. And then we were trying to like reach out to them, and at first it was kind of hard to get to the right person. Eventually we got it back online like about a day later, like within 24 hours, which is wonderful. But it was definitely like one of the most stressful times for the company because we were missing sales and like all this other stuff was going. Just teaches you how valuable these infrastructures are.
Yeah, no, that's a really good story of, you know, and also good for not panicking, right? Like you didn't say, okay, we're going to order a bunch of servers and do this all ourselves. Right, because I've seen certain companies where they have one hiccup with the cloud and they react in this way, as often under this false pretense of, okay, if we are managing it ourselves, then this wouldn't have happened. So, yeah, maybe not this exact thing, but these 100 other things would have. Wow. Okay, so you got back online, gave them a good credit card, got cut off on the bill, and you're back online.
For sure, for sure. And just to like yes and what you just said too, like I totally agree. Like there's just no reason. One, we'll never do a better job than AWS is because that's not our strength as a company. And if we were to become good enough to do a better job, maybe in this one edge case, having a smaller like unit in our office, for example, might be better. But what about all the other 99% of the issues, right? The tools, we'd have to build them from scratch. We'd have to do all this other stuff. It's just not worth it, right? And so it's better to just be strategic. What are you good at? Focus on what you're good at and let other people that are good at doing other things do that for you. That's my personal belief.
And I can imagine with so many smart people working for you, it would be easy to start dreaming up, we could do this, we could do that, we could do that, we could do that, and why not? And all of a sudden you're spread on, 10 different projects that are all probably really cool, but
it's just the crappy version of AWS,
yeah.
Is what it is.
Well, and not just that, but the other hardware stuff you could do, and other, there's a million interesting problems out there.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, everything. And I think you learn that at least like we do as a startup, right? Like you have limited funds, you have limited time. If we, it's just, if we tried to even do that would probably take us like 18 months to do it right and build everything out. And guess what? We're not building product.
A core product.
Right? Guess what? Product market fit we're not achieving our own, right? It's just it's not a good idea.
That makes a ton of sense. It's funny, one of the ones that we warn about, so Cloudfix, we do AWS cost optimization. There's on certain AWS databases, as sometimes you don't upgrade that version of the database and you're automatically enrolled into this extended support contract, which first it like doubles the cost of your database, and then if you keep it going, it will then it'll triple it, because they're having to backport all these security fixes to this old version of a database, and that could really sneak up on you. And so that's one of the things that we can't fix for you, because if you're stuck on this old version, there might be a reason. But we can give you this warning of saying, hey, this database, it's costing you $100,000 a month. Next month it's going to cost you 200. That's, you probably want to know. So that's kind of stuff that we try to automate and bring to people's attention.
For sure. And can you imagine a company that doesn't do cloud figuring out all that stuff? Like the way you learn most of that stuff is through mistakes. So at some point in time, there was some learning that happened at Amazon that led to that solution, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. And just understanding how to drive behavior with pricing, right? Because if they had to support every single version of this database forever, that would quickly just become a disaster, right? So they have to have this financial incentive to push people onto the newer versions. But it's easy to forget when you're doing 1,000 other things and your database is working and it hasn't had a hiccup in 2 years, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, why did this double overnight? That's why.
There was this great book I just finished reading called From Good to Great. And one of the key things that the book really touches on is do one thing really, really, really well. Like what are you going to be so good at that no one can ever beat you at, right? Because that's how and in our case, it's signal processing. Like we want to use AI-based filtering for signal processing. We're going to be so good at that if you buy a product that says powered by Neurable AI, you as a consumer are going to have a great BCI experience, right? Most consumer brain computer interfaces just don't work well. We want to make sure that when you see that badge, you know this is a good product, right? And so that's kind of our mantra, which is like we're going to focus on what we're really good at. Anything else we're going to get from other people. That's kind of and I think it's led us to the position that we're at right now as a company.
That makes a ton of sense. It's funny, in our space of cloud cost optimizers, a lot of people try to make these beautiful visualizations, and we have 3 dead simple ones that are like 10 lines of code, because we don't want to be in that space. So we use QuickSight, right? And it's really easy. There's a bunch of tech nerds to say, oh yeah, let's build our own visualization solution, and we'll build a library. It'll be so much fun. And like, in the meantime, what are we not doing? Helping people optimize their costs. So I really like that, though. The one thing, like, what is your one value add? And it's, okay, in your case, signal processing, extracting the information from the brain and turning it into a standard, where it almost like you can have it translate into like an API call, right? We say, okay, this whatever's going on here can turn into Focus 1.7 or Focus 10.2. That's really cool. Okay, so then can people build on this platform, or how does that work?
Yeah, and actually you touched on something just now that I think is really like profound and meaningful to me, which is like my dream with people building for this is that they build on it as developers and not scientists. Right? Like I want to make brain computer interface so easy to develop for because the signal's so robust and easy that it's like building for an accelerometer on your phone, and not, you having to be a scientist and have to take frequency transforms and like try to filter all the data out manually. Like we want it to be seamless, right? There is going to be a software development kit. It's going to be released in, knock on wood, a few months. And it's going to be the first time people are going to be able to get this data in a clean way and really build like developers for the first time.
Okay, so this might sound stupid, but like I could plug this into my Home Assistant and say, okay, if my focus is under 10.0 for an hour, turn on the coffee maker, right? Like
Exactly,
something
yeah.
silly like that. But I could do, oh wow, I can preempt this.
Yeah.
Wait, I smell the coffee brewing. What do I? Oh great, I that's just what I needed right now, right? Or something, whatever it is that helps you at that moment, you could literally just use it as another incoming piece of sensor data and build something on it. Or even if it's like turning off the bright lights and turning on the red lights, because I don't know, there's some research about that being better later at night for you. That's so cool that you can then actually be able to take advantage of all of that data in an actionable way.
Exactly. And most significantly as an API call, right? Like we want it to be that simple where you feel like if take a break notification is going to happen in the next 5 minutes, turn on my coffee maker, right? It should be that easy, right? And that's like what our mission is when we're building this SDK. Now, the first one is going to be more science driven because it's the easiest one we can build and we want to get it out as fast as possible. But the goal is to build on top of it to eventually make it as seamless to develop for as essentially an iPhone or an Android versus like some scientific kit that you have to know all this background and knowledge to be able to use.
Got it. Okay. And so people can get these, they can order these right now. These are in production. They're ready to go.
Yeah, and I'll give you a discount code to give to your users too,
Awesome. Okay, so check it out. It's going to be in the show notes. Thank you for that. That's going to be really cool. I'm definitely going to order a pair. I've these AirPods that are very long in the tooth, so I think they're ready. They've been dropped too many times. And I used to have the Bose QC35s, which were great, but they didn't have any smarts to them. So I'm really looking forward to a new pair of headphones that are actually they're going to take this data and build something cool with it.
Yeah, actually, most of our customers are QC previous owners, right? So they're just like, oh, I bought these for focusing and working with noise cancellation. Now I can actually do all that plus track my brain data and know when to take breaks. And so that's actually a lot of the majority of the customers for the tech have been old Bose users.
Interesting. Okay, well, I would definitely give that a try. All right, so wrapping up, I've really appreciated this conversation. It's so cool. As I love AWS cost optimization, but then having this zoomed out view of like, where does this all go? Like our brains, right? The coolest, all the AI stuff is trying to say to emulate a brain, but you're working with like actual brains. What do you think what is the future of brain-computer interfaces? Where is this going to be in, say, 5 years, and 10 years, and 50 years?
Yeah, so I would say in the next 2 to 5 years, we're going to start to see more and more companies releasing Neurable powered products, right? We're working with a lot of the major headphone brands and earbud brands out there, and you're going to, just like the, Apple Watch and like these wearable devices for your heart rate and movement have come out. Now we're going to start to see that for the brain, right? In 10 years, we're going to see that data turn into something that ends up helping people for their health, right? And then on top of that, AR is finally going to come into play, augmented reality. So imagine having a pair of augmented reality glasses that you can control with your brain, right? Because you don't want to carry extra joysticks with you whenever you're going to,
Well, and we've all seen these YouTube shorts of people, I don't know, with AR goggles, and all of a sudden they punch the wall or fall down the stairs or something silly because they've lost touch. So, okay, so 10 years, they'll be, you have a much better control, right?
Yeah.
You're not, okay.
You'll be able to control them with your brain activity instead of having to carry controllers, right? They're going to be like seamless frames. And then in 50 years, what I would say is like, I'd like to, and this is where predictions go terribly wrong, right? But I'd love to see a world where, every time we learn more about the brain, we develop better AI, right? And so I can see a future where we've learned so much more about how the brain works that it actually improves the AI systems we have, and those AI systems we have improves how we understand the brain. And it creates this like kind of moment where the momentum starts to happen, kind of like a singularity moment, but for the brain and AI. That really brings forward AGI. Like I want that future to happen. I think people think we're really close. Some of them do. I don't think we're that close. As a neuroscientist, there's still key things that like I think we need to develop an AI to get there, and I hope that we do solve those things.
Well, I agree with you on the optimism. I agree with you on the AGI. I think that in a lot of ways we're not close, but in a lot of ways it's exciting to see all of the progress that we are making. Ramses, thank you so much for being here. Oh, I've got a cool bit of swag for you. This is a CloudFix Iron Flask water bottle.
Amazing.
Thank you for being here, and I'll put that discount code for the Neurable. What's the model called? The MW75.
MW75 Neuro.
MW75 Neuro. Check that out. Thank you so much for being here, Ramses. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All
Take
right,
care.
let's do it.
Guess we can do that.
Yeah.